Hey everybody, it's Gavin Nathan here from GCRE TV today with Glenn Esserson, as always, on a Wednesday with the Mobile Home Park Show. Today, Glenn is going to speak about different and various ways to find mobile home park deals to buy and what to look for when doing so. So, Glenn, as always, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. As you know, we love talking to you and doing these shows. It's a pretty interesting topic this week. I look forward to taking some notes and actually following up with you after with some questions. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Gavin. Doing great. Just another great day here. Hope you're doing well too.
Yes. Well, the sun is shining finally today in
Finally.
Switzerland, so I'm happy.
Nice.
I know we always have a little banter about the weather in both sides of the world, right?
Yeah,
So
where I
it's
live, man, it's almost always nice. It's a good spot. If you can, if you like hot weather, it's a good spot.
yeah.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
about
Well,
75 degrees today, which is like perfect. So, uh,
yeah.
but yeah, let's
Well,
jump in.
yeah. So, Glenn, I will hand over the screen to you now. So it's all yours.
Great, great. Well, hey everybody, welcome back to our show. Today we're going to talk mostly about how to find a deal. I mean, that's like a critical step in being a park owner, I guess. So there's conventional ways, and then there's the ways other people are doing them, and a whole bunch of different strategies are deployed. And I've been doing this 20 years, and I think we got a few good ideas to share with y'all. Um, starting with like the obvious, brokers are a great source of parks. Okay. Um, and that's pretty easy to find. In the United States, we have real estate agents just everywhere, and your local realtor might have some access to mobile home parks through their MLS, their multiple listing service. Uh, and sometimes we find deals on there. I always find it bizarre when we find a deal on there, but there's sometimes deals on there. They typically tend to be smaller deals, um, and almost always mispriced, and have no underwriting to go with it. But that realtor themselves might actually understand the deal and be able to walk you through it. But they would not be my first choice as a resource for finding a park for sale. Then we have the commercial brokers, guys like me. There's plenty of girls in our industry too that focus on exclusively looking at our industry. Most commercial brokers like myself, we specialize in a niche and we stay focused on that niche alone. So, if you call me up any day of the week, I probably got 30, 40, 50 deals to share with you. Obviously, not all are going to be a fit, and we narrow it down to what criteria you're really looking for, and we expose you to the deals that we have. A lot of good brokers out there with lots of great inventory. So I would love to be your first call, but if you have some relationships or some reasoning to call these other brokers, there's some great brokers out there that absolutely have quality deals for sale that have been totally underwritten appropriately. And then there's the second tier of the commercial broker that's more of a generalist, and they focus on a region or a city or somewhere close to where they live, and they may or may not have mobile home park listings, but sometimes do, along with every other type of asset class. So those are the obvious choices for using a broker and just having immediate inventory come to you. Now, remember, when we price things, we're always pricing as high as we can, as high as we believe we can sell the park for, and that's part of the challenge with working with a broker, especially on your first deal, especially when you only have a couple $100,000. You might be thinking you need more yield, and that's when you would look out to how to find your own deals. Now, finding your own deals can be easy, it can be complicated. It tends to be more of a long game than pick up the phone and hey, you got a deal. Like if you call 5 or 10 brokers, chances are by the end of the day you'll have a couple of deals that you'll be pretty excited about and want to move forward with, albeit at a lower yield, higher price than if you had found those deals on your own and there was no broker fees involved and things like that. So how do you find your own deal on your own? Because that's what most guys do when they start off in this business. And it's a challenge. If you live in any one city, the obvious first thing to do is go drive all the parks in your city. If you go onto Google Earth, or Google Street View and drop some pins around and start seeing where the parks are, you'll get a good idea. You map them out. Depends what city you're in. There might only be a couple. Or if you're in a place like Asheville, North Carolina, there's 100 and something of them there. Might take you a whole career to go see them all. But that's the first way to start. And I would really suggest on your first deals to really stay as close to home as possible, unless if you live in Timbuktu or something, and you're gonna have to go somewhere far anyways. But if you live anywhere near a major metro, even if you're an hour outside of that metro, I would still recommend, looking in that region first and mapping out the parks that are out there. We've mapped out some ridiculous amount of parks, something like 30 or 40,000, parks around the country, and have pins all over our Google Earth map with each of them, and then whatever information that we have on that park by those, simple internet searches, and then conversations that eventually come from us following up on those searches, and then years of notes after we've been building relationships with them. And for us, it's very useful. But at first, you're going to go say, hey, look, I can afford to buy X amount, of a park. I can spend up to $1 million, or I can spend up to $500,000 or $5 million. And you're going to want to find all those parks that kind of fit your profile in your immediate location. And that's pretty easy. Google Earth and Google, if you just type in mobile home parks or trailer parks, or, any of the associated names with our industry to Google, you should usually be able to find about 50, 60, 70% of those parks, and just download them and put them in your thing. Oftentimes you're just going to get the park's phone number, and a lot of the time that's not going to get you to a decision maker. It's only going to get you to the person on the other end of the phone that tells people what the rents are, and if they have a space available or not, the property manager type of person. And their job is lately really about saying, oh no, the seller's not available or the owner's not available. I'll take a message and let them know. And that message then just kind of gets tossed in the trash most of the time, because they're probably getting, 5, 10, 15 calls, a day, in a lot of these parks by guys looking to buy that park. So, it's not the most effective strategy, but it's a start. And that's what you have to get comfortable with, because you want to know what you're calling on that park, and that property manager that might be answering, might give you some good information, how many spaces there are there, how much the rent is going for right now, how many, how the utilities are, amenities, etc. And that will give you more insight to understand that park. When you finally do get that owner on the phone, you'll be able to talk to him a bit more cohesively about, what that park's doing, without it being, such a interview of, how many of this, how many of that do you have? Because that's something that annoys so many owners, day in and day out. They get that question from so many people that are trying to get them to sell the park. It will help set you a little bit ahead of the other people he's talking to. Now, let's say you finally get a park and you get the park owner on there and you're having discussions with him. That's a real good shot at you having the ability to buy that park. If he's talking to you, and you've already explained to him, hey, I'm Bob, I'm looking to buy a park, and it's, my first purchase or my 10th purchase, and I'd like to talk to you, but do you have a few minutes for me? And then you kind of walk them through what you're trying to do, see if it fits what they're trying to do, and strike a deal. Oftentimes those kind of deals that get struck directly with the owner from the buyer are considerably better priced than me or any other broker is going to be able to give you. And it might make a lot of sense. It might not make any sense, and you guys will think it's a good deal. I can't tell you how many times good deals, their deals get done thinking they're a good deal, to find out, hey, there's all these problems, between, what was said to be delivered and what was actually delivered. And now I'm sitting, wondering why I didn't get this great deal that I thought I was buying, after I close, it's not performing, etc. But once you tap out that opportunity of, what's the low-hanging fruit of finding on Google, then you have to kind of shift gears a little bit, because after that it gets substantially harder. And during this whole process, if it was, if your goal is to kind of build a list of parks and start trying to find some parks to buy, you're going to need a way to keep track of these notes, and ideally a searchable way of keeping these tracks of these notes. So you have things like Monday.com, which is actually what my team uses, and I find it to be a very effective system for entering in that park name, the seller's name, the phone numbers, the emails, the unit counts, and keeping track of all of that real easy, and being able to type in your notes about everything you talk to with that seller. And it can also, track all your emails between that seller as well. So I find it very useful. It is a little technical, and there are, it's not, the easiest thing to get set up, but it's not the most difficult either. And I would rank that as my favorite, one to start with. Now, if you go to Excel and just use an Excel sheet, which is what I did for years, 15 years or something, I was using Excel sheets, and that I found very effective as well. You just keep a running tab, same type of columns that you would set up anywhere else, and all the information, and for the most part, it's mostly all searchable on the newer Excel templates, anyways. And so that's one other thing, is it's probably not going to be your first call that gets you that deal with that seller. It's probably going to be, way further down the line, sometimes months or years down the line of talking to that seller before he's actually ready to sell to you. And so you want to keep really good notes on this stuff. And that's important to use. Now, other people have other systems, but I don't want to get into all the different systems to keep track of. But I do want to let you know something like Monday.com or Excel are the two more favorite systems that I like of keeping track of all the properties out there. And a Google Earth is also a real good one. It's just not very searchable within the notes. But I can show you, I think I can share some screens here and kind of show you what this looks like. So this would be Monday. Let me jump over to here. Share screen. And I want to share this screen with you. Let's see, does that work? Let's see here. Okay. So this is Monday.com. And as you can kind of see, we keep track of the park names, the agent in charge of the deal, the park names, and, the status of the deal, and the various details about the deal that make it relevant to what we're trying to do. So you can see the lots and the tenants and things like that. Or you can be using something like, not that one, Excel, which is essentially this sheet, but in Excel format, and we all know how to use Excel. And of course, on Google Earth, if you clicked on, most of any of these parks, this is all these dots represent a park somewhere. Now, when you start using Google Earth, which I do recommend you use, but not necessarily for the note tracking, is getting a system called Parlay put onto here, because what that's going to help us do is, let me close out some of these parks here so it works a little bit faster for us. And what we're going to do is scroll into any municipality, and what you'll see here is that as you get into, let's say, Huntsville, where we've done a bunch of deals in Huntsville now, and as you scroll into a park, like for instance this one, we just sold this one, it will show you the parcel information and the parcel outlines and who the owner is, and a link to be able to access that park from the tax record side. And that's going to give you a lot of additional information to go find who owns that park, because most of the time they're owned under an LLC, and then you got to research the LLC. And you want to be able to keep track of all these notes, which is why the Monday system works, in my opinion, really well with tracking down ownership. Because after you've talked to the brokers and after you've done the Google, easy search, and you're still out of options, then this is where this stuff comes in. Because you're going to want to have to keep digging. And remember, every time you have to dig harder means a whole bunch of other buyers just fell off the face of the earth because they're lazy. Most brokers and buyers, they tend to get lazy if they have to work too hard on finding a deal. And so you scanning through a system like Google Earth with this parlay overlay is really going to help you understand who owns what. So like, again, in this case, this park is called Blackburn, but it was owned by Blackburn MHP LLC. And then you'd have to go to the Secretary of State and research who Blackburn MHP is. Okay. And then you'd find, a name or two, and you would go at that point, go to a system. Let's see here. Go to a system like this, which is called Fast People Search. And you would type in any person's name and the city and state that they're associated with this. If they're only associated with this park in this state, and that might not be their home state, you would still type in that city and state. And it would give you a list of most relevant people that match that criteria. And then phone numbers and emails and stuff. Now, a lot of the phone numbers are going to be dead phone numbers, and a lot of the emails are totally not going to work. But if you're systematic about it, you'll be able to track through all of that and start calling down the list and eventually get to the right number for that right person that owns that park, and then begin your discussion. So to kind of recap a little bit on those quick steps is, oh, hey, I'm searching through Google Earth and I find a park I like. So I turn on my parlay and I scroll into that park and, I say, hey, this looks like a park I would own. It's in my area. I don't know who owns it. So I'm going to click the button and it tells you all this great information. Like it tells you where the mailing address for that LLC is, which is, this one down here. And that's going to help you with your next search on Fast People Search, which is right here. And you would then, put in whatever you find on there from the Secretary of State's site. You'd have to go there and search in that case, it was Alabama Secretary of State. You put in there, you drop in that LLC, get an executive's name from that LLC, pop it into Fast People Search, and then find it. Now, that's all more or less free. Parlay's a couple $100, but the rest of it's all free. Now, there's better systems out there that, cost, kind of a lot of money. You can use IDI and LexisNexis and all these other type of options for researching people. But I found those to be very accurate and good to use, but very expensive. Whereas this is a pretty low cost, nearly free option that helps you kind of dig into, ownership and the actual people that are involved in that deal. So that's, definitely something I would think all of you guys would find value in searching and finding the owners. And you're going to go through them over and over and over again. And, it's going to take you 100 calls to find one or two guys that are probably, a real deal. But then that's, what you're looking for. And then you start striking the deal. Now you got the guy on the hook. He's willing to sell you the park. And, you're having a nice discussion. You're building rapport with them. Now, what are you trying to do at this point? Are you just going to say, well, Mr. Seller, because you have, 100 space park with only 50 tenants, I'm going to, offer you a price based off of your lot rent on those 50 tenants. Hey, you can do what you want on the phone. It's not necessarily how I would do it. I would really try and get to understand what that seller's goals are. A lot of times they're trying to be done with the business and move to somewhere warmer and get on a boat and go fishing all day or something like that. And that's kind of what you're looking for, is trying to understand what they're really trying to do, to see if there's some other avenues of being able to add value to the transaction without increasing the cost of the transaction by maybe somebody down there that's selling a boat or something like that. And you want to try and work through as many options with them as you can, but you need to get crystal clear on the number of lots, the number of tenants, the number of homes that they own, the lot rents, the home rents, the utility makeup, and just to have any kind of grounds to be able to even write an offer on this thing. And you want to try to understand about financing. Does he currently have a loan on it? Is there a prepayment on that loan? Is there no debt on this thing? And he owns it free and clear. Maybe he would want owner finance because his tax is going to be pretty high if he's not trying to do a 1031. And you want to work, through some options with him after understanding what he's trying to do, and then, come up with a number. I really don't think the strategy of, hey, Mr. Seller, I'll give you $1 million is the best strategy, which a lot of guys do. But then they go through all the underwriting and they got to, retrade this guy later on, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but it certainly leaves a bad taste in everybody's mouth. And, I don't know that that's the best way to go about it. I tend to think that do your homework up front as much as the owner will let you do your homework up front, and then get as close to what your best number is on your first offer and say, this is about as good as it's going to get with me, unless you have different information that I'm not privy to that would help increase my price. I find that to be the best method to get the deal and the seller, everybody kind of hooked up to a point of transaction. A lot of guys love just hey, Mr. Seller, you looking to sell? Yes. How much do you want? $5 million. Okay, here's $5 million contract. Send me a due diligence. And they try and tie up the property for a long time. And, go through the due diligence phase before the PSAs even signed, as they're keeping this thing kind of jammed up and getting the seller further and further away from other buyers, to kind of get the seller in a position where he has to negotiate with you to your advantage. And I don't really like that strategy. I totally get it. It's been done for the last 1,000 years on everything, but I think that that's not really the best way to go. It's almost impractical to think that off of one conversation you're going to have enough information to get a real value out of it and then give it to this guy. And if you're giving this guy his value just to jam him up and then retrade him later on, do what you got to do. But I just don't like that philosophy. I'd rather develop the rapport with the seller to where it becomes almost friendly, two guys talking, hey, we're trying to achieve a goal together kind of conversation, because the rest of your process of acquisition through the closing is going to be much cleaner, much easier, and a lot less, headaches and fussy attitudes that, will oftentimes kill a deal anyways later on when that approach is used. That all said, to kind of, look at some other options on going through how to find a deal. There are some good listing services, publicly available listing services that are out there. Some cost some money, some don't. There's a service that nearly every broker puts his parks onto that's called Crexi, CREXI.com. And it's every type of real estate that's commercially sold, and it's almost always listed properties. But it's a great avenue just to get on the internet and see mobile home parks in California for sale, and it will show you a list that seems almost endless sometimes. And you can go through that. Oftentimes there's good information in there too, so you can kind of get to know your region a little bit more of what's publicly available and how rents look, and how sometimes there's sale comps in these things. And you go through and find a lot of this information. It's a lot of legwork and it takes some time. But if you're capturing the information right, it's going to help you really understand your market better and be able to make your first conversation with that seller more compelling, and you'll sound more knowledgeable, and hopefully that rapport builds into something that transacts as a deal later for you. Another great listing service that's out there it's called the Mobile Home Park Store. I believe that's what it's called. And that's, anybody can post on there. And, oftentimes there's just direct by sellers that are on there, just putting it up as you would any other listing and letting buyers contact them. Oftentimes the underwritings on these things that are seller listed on there are bananas. So, it won't make a lot of sense. It might sound like a great deal, but, look through it. And most brokers use that site too. So, those two sites have a lot. People used to use Craigslist and LoopNet a lot. Those are kind of dinosaurs nowadays. You'll find deals on there occasionally, but again, they're probably also on those other listing sites as well. And a handful of others that are out there, but they kind of get fewer and far between with less and less deals, and they're usually on those other websites as well. Of course, keeping track of who the major brokers are in your area and nationally, and just putting their website as a favorite, so you can just go click back into it over and over again. We often just put all of our listings on there for anybody to see with good information. So going back to the broker side of thing, again, you'll start seeing that the broker's underwriting is going to be a lot different than the seller's underwriting. And, I would trust more of the broker's underwriting than the seller's underwriting, but at the end of the day, you still have to underwrite yourself. And to underwrite it yourself, you kind of have to understand your bigger market. So going through these listing sites and going through these broker sites and getting the data that you can about your various parks from various areas, so you can kind of sort that information and start making some sense of it, is a great way to start when you finally get that seller on the phone and be like, hey, I know this market really well. We got 25 parks out here, and your park is pretty similar to 5 or 6, and those rents seem to be between this number and that number, and I wanted to talk to you about your park. And you kind of go into that conversation. So I hope that's been useful. I know it's kind of a lot of information all at once, but I think if nothing else, what you learned here is use a system like Monday.com, use a system like Google Earth, buy some overlays for Google Earth. Parlay is a really good one. Getting the opportunity zones and the flood zone maps is a really good one. And to put on your Google Earth, it really bogs down Google Earth, but it works well. And using the internet and the available free resources that are already there on the listing sites, such as Crexy and those other ones that I mentioned, and broker sites, will give you a pretty comprehensive idea of what to do. Now, some guys are still out there, mailing cards to people. I can tell you that every owner I've ever met with, he's got a stack of cards on his desk that, I'm not kidding you, is as big as my head and just goes on and on. Yeah, you can mail him a card, but he's probably not responding to it. And the guys that typically respond to those cards are typically sellers that have really terrible parks and they have no other options and things like that. And that might not be what you want to buy anyways. So again, Crexy, Google Earth, and the overlays that go with it, listing sites, and brokers are a great resource, guys, and they'll make your lives a lot easier than going through those other steps. Like searching through the Secretary of State and going through all their documents. That's a good time. So use us where applicable. Use yourself when you can and save a few bucks. But these are all sort of the more standard ways to define your own deal. And I'd be happy to talk to any of you about it more privately. Just email me, call me, whatever. We'll have a conversation. I'll give you some more tidbits and insights on that.
Glenn, that's a really good show today. Thank you. I've been making notes crazy as always when you're speaking. So I think I'll just go through a couple of the things just for the viewers at home. So the first thing you mentioned, which was quite interesting to me, because I'm very aware of the MLS service. You said they're not always accurate or they're not always correct. And I know a lot of people like to use the MLS service. So I thought that was
quite interesting. It's good for like small stuff, 4-unit, 8-unit type of parks. And maybe when I say not accurate, I don't mean like the price or the address might not be accurate. I mean the basic breakdown of what they're saying revenue and NOI is. They might not even know the difference of, a park-owned home and a lot renter with a lot of those MLS type of listings. It's just like, oh, my park makes, $10,000 a year and I want a 10 cap. And so boom, you're up at $100,000 or something like that. And there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just kind of maybe the real estate agent used comparables, but the comparables in the MLS for mobile home parks are not realistic compared to the comparables that commercial brokers have for recent sales and stuff like that. It might be a good deal. I mean, we have scored some deals off of there. Sometimes you find a deal that's fully underpriced and it's a park and it's a location, but it's like a blonde hair in a haystack kind of thing when you use the MLS. But it is an option, and your local realtor sometimes can be real sharp and real good, and sometimes they're a dime a dozen, So you have to be realistic with who you're talking to. Maybe they know the industry, maybe they don't.
Yeah.
But it's worth pursuing, at least making a call through it or going through the MLS.com and seeing if they have anything on.
Yeah. No, that's cool. And the second thing I picked up is having some knowledge before approaching the owner will definitely help when speaking with them. So being able to understand the different numbers and vernaculars, as we talked about a few weeks ago, would allow the seller to know that you're not just an amateur who's just jumping into this, because you could be taken advantage of very, very easily. The seller would know, oh, this is just somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. Let's just jack up the price, or let's just do something. So understanding the market or the language that they speak is really a high thing for anybody who's going into this. Which sometimes it seems like it's common sense, but not a lot of people understand this. They just jump into it.
it's funny how common sense works. It's like, was it obvious before I said it, or was it obvious, only until I said it, and people, when they call, they get so excited that this guy's wanting to talk to me, and he says his park's for sale. But a lot of times, these guys that are calling are either very new, or they're a cold caller for a syndicator, or for a wholesaler, or for even a broker sometimes. And they might not know anything more than the script that they're reading, right out in front of them. And the owner hates that. They hate that when that happens, because they know they're not talking to a decision maker. Okay.
Yeah.
Or if they are talking to a decision maker, this guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. But if you call up and be like, hey, I'm so and so, I'm looking to buy your park, and I talked to John down the street about his park, and got to hear what Bob's doing at his park over there, and I wanted to talk to you about your park because yours seems the most interesting to me. From what I can tell, it looks like you have 50 lots with 40 tenants, and it looks like your lot rents are $300. Is that an accurate statement? And let them kind of say, oh, okay, hey, we're actually talking now, and you talked to Bob and you talked to John, so maybe you're a real deal. And it's just good, good salesmanship, if you will, when you're calling a seller to know what the heck you're talking about and to have some idea around the market. Because what if you call him up, you don't know. He's like, yeah, my lot rents are $500 in this market. I want all this money for it. And that might sound reasonable to you until you go and call Bob and John and find out their lot rents are only $250 or $300. And then you say, oh, well, this guy might be jerking my chain a little bit.
Yes.
And I'm at risk of overpaying, or I'm at risk of going under contract and wasting all this time and money and headache just to fall out of contract for a deal that wasn't going to make sense anyways. So having that initial knowledge, that cursory basic knowledge about what that park is, will help set you apart from the vast majority of people that are cold calling this guy.
Yes.
They probably are just looking at like a list of things that somebody gave them and said, start calling. And, I tell you, when that happens, a lot of these sellers, they get a little annoyed. They remember these phone numbers you call from. That's the crazy thing, is they save these numbers in their phone, and they put notes with them or whatever. And so that way they know when that number rings again, oh, this guy's a jerk off. He's wasting my time. I'm not answering. Oh, this guy's a broker. I kind of like him, but I don't want to talk to a broker right now. Oh, this guy's a real buyer, the real deal. I'll pick up this. If they call you back a second or third time, then you might actually have somebody on the hook. But that first conversation, that's your make or break conversation, because oftentimes they're not going to give you a second chance, and you have to seem compelling. You have to, and you have to sound at least intelligent enough to make this guy know that you know what you're talking about, and have some credibility that you guys can discuss.
Oh, most definitely, like anything else. And it's really interesting that you brought up technology today in the conversation as well, which I know a lot of people. I've now spoken to quite a few people, as you know, in the industry, and very few people tend to use a project management tool, which is what Monday.com is. They tend to use CRMs. So CRMs, I think, is personally okay, but it's not really a really good project management tool. So it was really
not a good management tool. And a CRM, that you had some limitations with the CRM, and you can use Salesforce or Apto or any of these other ones that are out there, and they're good. Yeah. Like, we used to use them. They're just, when you have to start building out a bigger team, they become more complicated and more expensive. And I'm always trying to find the simplest things out there. And I love free, man. Free's great. So, because we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on systems and other things. Yeah. So anytime I find a system that's free and useful, I get pretty excited about it. And Monday, we pay for it now. It's like the $20, $30 a month, version. Yeah. But, even the free one's great. And it has all these other systems in it. So when you mark a deal in there and it has this, other contact information, you can set reminders to set up a drip line for this guy, to send him an email every few months or whatever, and other things to it that tell people on the other parts of your team, hey, I'm doing this, it's your turn to do that. And you can set up all these if and then type of equations that are phenomenal. I personally, I have nothing to do with Monday, but I personally think Monday's right now the best work operating system out there that and I'm a big fan of it. It just keeps getting cooler and cooler the more we use it. But you have to still put the information in. There's going to be a better system one day. Just right now, this is the first system that I've seen coming from Excel that was like, this is like Excel, but better. And it was easy for me to learn for the most part.
Yeah.
And, it seems scalable. Excel otherwise works perfectly fine, guys. Like, you don't need to do anything but Excel. I made a career off of using my Excel. And as long as you do it systematically and you build out your columns properly and you put in proper touch points along that and keep relevant data, you can make a heck of a system out of Excel, which is what I use. So you got options there. And then that other technology, we used to use Asana and a few other, and Slack and some of this other stuff. It came to the point where it's like, now I got my guys using 5 systems and they're getting confused and it's not simple and this is not happening on this thing because we're forgetting about it on that thing. And just cut all that out. And Monday seemed to be the tool that fit best.
Yeah. It's funny enough because only just weekend I was working with a friend of mine, and she was working with Monday.com, and she was telling me all the great things about it. So it's nice to hear that you say the same thing. I might actually look at it for us in the company. So the next thing I came across was, to understand that the seller might not be interested in selling for at least months on end. And some people just kind of going in there guns blazing without understanding or point as well, which is understanding the seller's motivation is also a really big place to come at it. So when you contact the seller, don't just go straight into your sales pitch. Kind of ask him about himself, what he's thinking, what his thoughts are.
I mean, be relevant, but don't go for the money on the first on the first sentence. But usually that's a turnoff. I mean, some people appreciate the directness, but at the same time, they're going to directly respond, no, thank you. Most of the time. So, for us, our average life from like the time I first meet a seller to the time I finally transact with them, I mean, that can sometimes be years. And 2 years ago they might have said, "Yeah, I'm thinking about selling." And then they went through the whole like, well, I'm going to put you on hold and Mr. Broker, and I'm going to talk to all these other buyers out there for the next year, but went in and out of contract a whole bunch of times and, kind of not enjoy the process. And then I'll call you back and maybe we'll start having a real talk. Now, as a buyer who's not a broker, you have an advantage because you can just be like, look, show me the money. Here's the money. Like I'm ready to do something with you and let's make it happen. As a broker, I can't do that. I can't be like, hey, here's the money. Let's make it happen. Although, I mean, off-market deals and buyer purchase deals, we do that often enough. But there's still an additional layer of resistance there. And the sellers who are really, on the fence about selling, you kind of have to work with them and build a lot of trust. Even as a buyer, I know plenty of my buyers have, been courting some owners for, months and years and taking them out to lunch every now and then, asking how the family's doing, trying to stay relevant in their lives because it takes sometimes, a couple of years for this guy who's owned the park for 40 years to come off of it. There's a lot of emotional attachment there. Yeah. And when these guys that have these legacy type of parks where they put all their, blood, sweat, and tears into, it's silly to think they're going to sell it to you the first time you call them. I mean, there's a lot of them, there's more to it. There's a whole tax equation that has to be solved. There's the whole like pissing your kids off that they're not getting the park that has to be discussed with the family. There's all these other aspects that go into it. Now, sometimes people are just ready to sell and you get lucky. And I mean, once or twice a year, I get lucky on a deal like that. And it's nice when it happens. But the vast majority of my deals, man, like 18 to 24 month, is kind of the horizon that we look at, from start to finish. From the first time we have an introduction to a seller to the time we get to a closing table. But oftentimes, now we get a seller call us up out of nowhere and say, hey, we're ready to sell. And then, within a few months we're closed. That happens too. And I would say as a buyer, you have the ability to go faster than I do. And that's your advantage. But, remember, that's what everybody else is doing too, that's looking at talking to that guy. So you got to find a differentiator to separate yourself out. And nothing beats face-to-face, eyeballs to eyeballs. Nothing. You showing up at that guy's park, if he's an on-site manager himself, and just, bringing a gift, always bring a gift, okay? Whether it's a bottle of wine or a bottle of whiskey or this or that, bring a gift and say, hey, I'm glad I want to talk to you and do some eyeball stuff because that's for especially the old timers, that goes a long way in our business. A lot of guys totally forget that side of the business. They just use a call list and call until they get a yes. And, hey, dialing for dollars works if you dial enough phone numbers,
Yeah, maybe like 1,000 to 1 or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, cool. And then so there's two other things that would kind of come into one. So one is knowing what the numbers are. So doing your homework, don't just offer a price off the back end, and also understanding if there's any loans or liens on the property and stuff like that before you even make a price. So let
Yeah,
the
you want to
seller
know that.
speak first.
Yeah, you want to know that because first off, if there is a loan on that property, it's very probable you'll get another loan on that property. Okay. If there's not a loan on that property and it's not because it's been paid off, okay, and it's just because no, I bought this in cash, red flag goes up. Why did you pay cash? Oh well, I couldn't find a bank to finance it. So that's some kind of a red flag right there. You got to really pay attention to because are you prepared to pay cash for this thing? Maybe the markets have opened up and maybe that part is now financeable, but maybe not. And a lot of times the answer is maybe not, especially because the sellers often haven't built the books and records yet. If it is financeable, you might have to find a bridge lender to do it. And that's a little scary for a lot of people. It's short-term debt. It's more expensive. It's often recourse. And so you have to kind of understand, and you're not asking for too terribly personal information by asking, hey, do you have a loan on this thing already? Because the next question is, oh, you do, great. Is that loan assumable? Because maybe there's an easier way for you to enter this deal through an assumption loan. Okay. And maybe that helps him solve, some other issue with his lender if he's trying to prepay early or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few advantages to going down that avenue of questioning. With the ultimate, kind of for most people anyways, at least a couple of years ago it was the ultimate. Nowadays it's less ultimate, but getting a seller to finance that part. Most of the time sellers are reluctant to finance, but if you can explain to them really the tax advantage to them, behind them owner financing that part for you, it's going to save you a lot of brain damage and a lot of time under contract. And you're going to know that you can feel almost more secure because now the seller's got skin in the game too with you as you're buying this thing. And it's, he's not trying to, get you to fail and get the park back. At least not most of the time. Sometimes,
Yes.
But not most of the time. Most of the time, they are truly trying to move on. I mean, I would finance my park because it just made sense for me. I didn't want to pay the taxes, and I wanted a steady income, and all that kind of stuff. So you put down a down payment, and then you make payments to the seller. But today, interest rates are so stupid low at 3%, 4% that it often will make the deal worse by owner financing. Okay. For you as a buyer, because the owner is probably going to say, I'm not doing that for 3%. I want 5 or 6%, and I want 50% down if you want me to owner finance this thing. And, I can understand why, but as a buyer, the buyer is going to be like, it's a little expensive for what I could get on this thing, even if I have to wait a year of building good books and records and refinance, So you want to at least understand what options are there for them and talk to them. If owner financing makes sense, for you, even at a high interest rate, explain to them why it makes sense for them. Because that is painless when you have owner financing. It becomes easy to get that transaction done because financing a park is notoriously hard. It's easier than it's ever been. Still notoriously hard. It's still a whole lot of hurry up and wait, and hey, we really like you, but now we got to dump you, and all that kind of stuff. And it's still a challenge, even though it's easier than it used to be. So understanding all the financing aspects that's currently in place will help you negotiate better with the seller.
Oh shit. Sorry guys, looks like we have some technical difficulties there. We'll see if Glenn is going to join us back just now. Sorry there, Glenn, we just lost you for a second.
Oh, I don't know what happened. It just blanked out.
Yeah. No, we're back now.
Great. Sorry about that.
That's okay. These things happen. Technical error.
Yeah. Yes. I don't know if you caught the last one I was saying, but go down the bunny hole of what financing is in place and how it affects your deal. It becomes a negotiating point later.
Yeah. No, that's good stuff. I mean, you've covered everything. And I think the last thing really, which use listing services as a good research tool as well. Don't take every word for it, or make your calls, do your due diligence, research, so that when you actually do, approach people, you sound like you know what you're doing, and not a muppet, as we would say in England.
Yeah. A lot of owners, when you call them, you say, "How much is your lot rent?" they're going to say, "Oh, my lot rent's $350," and what they're talking about is the new guy that just came in today. We're charging him $350, but everybody else in the park is at $275. And so you have to learn to drill into some of those questions because it's obviously a big part of the pricing factor. So like it's not necessarily a lie; it's just how they perceive what they're telling you as far as the information they're giving you. It's like, you call a guy a liar, he's probably not going to talk to you again. You let it be, hey, maybe you were saying that 350 is the new guy and 275 is the old guy, and give him an out in order to keep having that discussion. And you got to verify this stuff. Don't take nobody's word. Don't take the broker's word. Don't take the seller's word. Anybody's word on this except your own personal view on what your research said about that market, that park.
Okay, cool. Glenn, that was a really good show today. I learned a lot. I think for the next show, maybe just as an idea, we could probably do the financing of a mobile home park, the different
I'll
options.
have to bring somebody on. I'll try and get somebody on for that one. It might not be next week, is a week's short notice. But we can definitely talk about the financing of an MHP. I don't want to get over my skis with the financing. I can tell you, plenty of stuff that's, ballpark kind of correct. But there's some great, mortgage brokers out there that understand the financing of parks tremendously better than I do. And I'd be happy to see if we can make that happen.
Yeah, that would be an interesting show for it. So, Glenn, as always, how does anybody get in contact with you if they want to touch base with you again?
Very easy. Just go to Google and search my name, Glenn Esterson, or go to themhpexpert.com. And we have all our contact information on there too. If you're looking for deals, you can go to my brokerage website, which is EstersonMHCteam.com, and go through $100 million worth of deals and see everybody on my team and their contact information. We'd love to hear from you. We pick up every phone call. We answer every email. It might not be it right then, but we always get back to it if we missed it. And we'd be happy to have a discussion with any of our listeners.
Okay, great. Glenn, as always, I look forward to having my next show with you, and we'll end the show here today.
Sounds good, Gavin. Thanks so much.
Take care. Bye.